Hello, everybody. Welcome to another session of Awaken and Unleash Your Power 7-day retreat. We have Dr. Eleanor. She is a psychologist, a spiritual thought leader. She fuses the psychological world with the spiritual world. And we're going to go right in today about how you can integrate your consciousness using the four worlds. Hello, Eleanor.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here with
Hey.
us today. I'm so excited to talk to you because, like me, I integrate psychology and spirituality together. And I think those are very important components to integrate in healing work.
Mhm.
So you and I had spoken a lot about the four worlds. Would you like to introduce what that is for
I
us?
would love that. Uh, the four worlds are talked about in esoteric theory and history a lot. Our card deck has four suits. They represent the four worlds. The four worlds are the mental world, the world we live in, the world we think of as our reality. The spiritual world, which I consider the integrative field of consciousness, because it's our soul and our spirit that makes us who we are. And it's the pain of the soul that hurts when we're not recognized, when we're not living who we really are. The emotional world is related in many ways to the mental world. It's the world of emotional reactions, hurt feelings, reactivity, frustration. And those feelings are here for our growth. They're here for us to transform into a higher octave of consciousness and overcome any challenges that we might face in our daily life. And then, of course, there's the physical world, which is our body, our health, our hormones, our body chemistry, and how we navigate the world affects our stress level, our physiology.
Hmm.
And the worlds are developed over time in a baby. So from 3 months before birth to 3 months after birth is really the developmental time when human consciousness has its spurt into giving us as human beings choice. And a baby does not reach for things or have volition, as it's called in psychology, until they're 3 months old. So in my work, mapping out energy maps, I look at the four worlds and then I look at how they integrate. And when I look at human consciousness as an integrative field, then transformation happens because individuals can understand which world they're functioning in. And in that world, the key question is, what do I want to have happen? And when you ask yourself, what do I want to have happen? You can lay out goals, you can know what you want to manifest, you can know what you don't want to manifest. And it's that consciousness that propels us forward in our life mission.
That's fascinating that the soul chooses its consciousness 3 months before birth,
Mm-hmm.
and how it integrates the four worlds. The soul will integrate the four worlds. Is there an instance where a soul might be in limbo, where they're more in the spiritual plane but not on the physical plane, or there's an imbalance
I
of?
see that all the time. Using the birth time, I integrate the four worlds using astrological calculations. So what I'm using is the birth time, place, and date. And then when I run the chart, I'm using multiple birth times. I'm using 3 months before birth, a week before birth on the lunar level, the 88 solar minutes before birth. So I get an emotional chart, a spiritual chart, a physical chart, which is a lunar chart, and a birth chart. And I do that prenatally as well as postnatally.
Wow.
We have an esoteric principle, as above, so below.
Mm-hmm.
We also have past, present, and future. And that comes from the fact that a baby takes the postnatal 3 months. The pediatric literature now says that the baby is a neonate until 3 months of age, and it's the missing 4th trimester of pregnancy.
Interesting.
So there's good scientific data that says, whoa, don't judge the psyche or what an astrological birth chart would be unless you look at the whole picture. And psychology has not looked at the whole picture to date. We've been led to believe that who we are is who we're conditioned to be in the real world. We're not that. Most of the psychological pain that I've seen in my practice is people's soul not being recognized. And it's my strong sense and belief that you know who you are when you're born, and you fight for that to be recognized, no matter what your type is, no matter who you are. You want other people to recognize who you are, how you want to be treated, how you want to grow, all of the things that make us feel joyful, fulfilled, and like we're living the life of our dreams. And working with the 4 worlds allows us to do that.
Interesting. So when we tap into the 4 worlds, we have this information that can really reveal to us who we really are to our core, beyond conditioning, our own ego's programming. And we get the truth. We get a big picture of our truth. And then from there, we can take action steps to align ourselves with where we're going and with where we are, right?
Yes.
So, for example, you did an amazing energy map on me, an energy map reading for me before this. And you had really brought up a lot of things that I had known, and also you were giving direction with how I can alter and adjust some of those, you would say, more things I needed to adjust. And somebody who doesn't know this information, how can they take the first step with making adjustments in their lives when they know they want to?
When I teach about the 4 worlds, I teach people to, for example, write their goals down in each world. So instead of looking at goals in a global way, delineate which world it really is operating in. Because, for example, if you want to change jobs, that's the mental world. But then what do you want to change in terms of the spiritual component of that world, of that work, of that job? What is the emotional climate that you want to be in? And physically, what are the hours? What is involved? So just a simple goal can be broken down into the worlds. And then when the worlds come together in an integrated whole, you really know what you want to accomplish. And what you manifest can manifest in little bitsy pieces over time. And we get 3 months to self-correct.
Well, that's actually, it's great for us to segue into this. What is the manifestation process?
Well, it usually starts on the unconscious level before we're conscious of it. So I sort of think of a constant flow, like a stream. We're constantly getting information about who we are, how we want to manifest, who we want to be in every instance in our life. Even, a simple thing is going to a restaurant, let's say. Who are we sitting at the table at that restaurant vis-a-vis the waiter or waitress? So every aspect of our life has multiple components to it. And I usually, for myself, do a to-do list every day. And I look at which world it's in. Now, a lot of to-do things are the mental world.
Yeah.
But energy you bring to them is either the emotional world, the physical world, or the spiritual world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important to know.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's physical, you're going to have a different attitude toward it mentally than if it's an emotional world.
So for example, if on my to-do list, I have, let's just say on my to-do list, I have that I need to do something I don't like. Most of the things we have to do, we don't really like doing, right? So if I'm identifying what world that's coming from, where would I place things that I don't want to do? Would it be the emotional world?
Which world is it? I mean, if it's communication with someone, it
Something
might be
emotional, maybe.
yeah, or not. Just it could be a positive emotional thing. But which world is it? It's the emotional world. And the emotional world is actually the angelic world. It connects to the spirit. We want to transform that energy into its highest octave. So if it's something you don't want to do, and it's emotional, like let's say confronting someone about something that bothered you, how could you do it in a way that would be something that would bring you joy, that would bring you peace? And so when you begin to think about that axis, clarity comes. On the other hand, let's say you're at a job and you have to confront a boss. Maybe that's the mental world that you have to take into account. What are the consequences of your action? And is it worth it for you? So when you begin to break it down, it has nuances to it, but it gives you clarity of which part of me is this touching? And if it's not touching your spirit, does it matter? It can give you a lot of courage if you know that it's not going to the depth of your soul.
I love that you frame it that way, because so many of us have things that we dread doing, but if we actually changed our thinking behind that, and we could identify what world it's coming in and also what we want to feel as a result from doing that thing we don't want to do, we can actually alchemize our experience before we even start. So that when we do start, we're starting with the right foot in front of us.
Exactly. I was aware in a personal crisis with one of my children, where their life was at risk. And I remember sitting and thinking, okay, how can I be my best self in this worst possible situation where I may have a grandchild who doesn't have a parent? And how could I even imagine that happening? But I found myself thinking, okay, if this worst possible thing that I could ever imagine happened, how could I be my best self in that worst possible situation? And the other question I always ask or say to myself is, okay, God, what is so important that you would put me in this challenge? And what do I need to learn? How can I be my best self in this situation to meet the challenge?
That's beautiful. Typically, when we have such a crisis like that happen, our survival instincts kick in, and it overrules our spiritual mind, our sense of
Yes.
connection.
Uh-huh.
And we
Well,
have to ground.
it's the emotional fear.
The emotional fear. In the emotional plane, the fear takes over.
Right.
So you almost have to hijack your emotional world, tap into your spiritual world, which is having a bird's eye view of everything that's happening, right?
Right.
You look down, you turn your observer on, and you say, how can I be my best self? I love that, because people forget how to be themselves in an argument, when they're triggered, in a crisis, especially when your life's involved. But that can be a really huge turning point for somebody, can't it?
It was a huge turning point for me, because I realized at that point I had enough witness of myself to be able to watch my process while I was going through it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes.
part of the key to working with yourself, regardless of the system you're working with, is to watch your own reactions and to ask yourself, is this who I want to be?
Mm-hmm.
Is this the me who's authentic?
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times our wounds will come up to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
How can somebody witness that they're acting from a wounded place, and also at the same point forgive themselves after it happens?
Ask the simple question: what was so important for me to learn from this? And then when you get the answer, then you know why you did it the way you did it, and you know what the next step is actually going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful.
It's always about the self being empowered to the soul level.
Mm-hmm. When we are becoming empowered, when we're on the path of that, once we get there, like once we can feel what it's like to have that empowerment, have you found that people have stayed there, they've made choices from that place, or have they regressed back? It's almost like once you cross that line, you don't go back. But
well, if people actually integrate the worlds and they cross and have a transformation, I've seen it remain.
mm-hmm.
I've seen, there are a couple of people in my webinar who started when we first started, and I don't even recognize them anymore. Their whole countenance is so different. But we've been working with the four worlds. When someone resolves an issue only in one world, there may be unfinished business in the other worlds. And so then you see it repeating. Slightly different. It's a little twist, but it repeats until it's completed.
Would you call that karmic?
It doesn't have to be karmic. A lot of what happens to us in the mental world is not karmic. A lot of our reactions are not karmic. It's more the soul stuff that challenges us that is the karmic stuff.
I see. You mentioned something really amazing about getting in touch with the soul. How can someone live from that soulful place without being tempted to go into their ego again? And I think that you call that the mental plane. Yes.
Well, one of the best ways is meditating daily. I started meditating with transcendental meditation in 1974. And within a week, I went from swimming 8 laps to 13 laps. And I attributed that to my meditating. I now do close to a mile a day.
Wow.
So meditating, praying, staying connected with your own sense of the divine, taking time to breathe, let the divine breathe you, where you're watching your breath and not moving your breath, I think is important. I meditate at least once, usually twice a day. I do Tai Chi Gong every day. I swim, I exercise. So in order to work through anything and to stay spiritually connected, self-care and time to go inward, to keep a journal, to write down your dreams, to deal with what's unconscious and super conscious. It's the unconscious has gotten a bad name. We think that it's, not something we know about. But unconscious is also something below the surface of consciousness. And we do have access to it.
Yeah. Well, our subconscious and our unconscious we have more, it's more vast than our conscious mind. Therefore, we can pull more from that place if we know how to and choose how to. Actually, that's a great question to ask you, Dr. Eleanor, is how can someone really tap into their unconscious state and pull out the magic from there?
I think the first order of business is make sure your environment is supportive. So many people live in an environment that is not reflective of their own energy. Get your space in order. Organize it, clean it, get rid of the clutter and the noise. There are ways of protecting from electromagnetic frequencies. On my Noble Energy Wellness website under resources, I list some resources I use. I never recommend anything unless I use it myself. But being aware of your environment and then creating a space where you can be with yourself. Get enough sleep, eat the right foods, don't use artificial sweeteners. And a lot of our food supply is toxic now. So I only eat organic and grass-fed, grass-finished meats or Cook's Venture chicken. You have to go for purity. And you need a space where you can be alone with yourself, no other energies around except perhaps your pets, because they take you into the collective unconscious, which is where we tap into our soul. And it's there that you need to spend time and be reflective and quiet and be. And when you know, and I always say this to people, when you know what you know, because you know, and nobody can tell you you don't know, don't compromise.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's very profound. It's the simplest things that we do in our 3D dimensional world where we can touch the tangible objects that really make a difference.
It does.
Because then we can go high, but we also have to know how to bring it back down into this world that we're living in. And the dance between those two worlds and four really make a difference in how your life is like and the quality of it.
Exactly.
So whoever is listening, and if you feel stuck in one world, know that you can bring yourself out or shift that rigidity into the other world. You have access to other worlds. Your mind may be limiting you and thinking that you don't, but you actually do. We're here to tell you that you do. And your neurochemistry can change as a result. Your behavior changes, and then your life changes thereafter.
One of the keys is breathing. If you are stressed, increase the exhale. If you need more energy, increase the inhale. And always release into the earth. And release any negative energy back to its source.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we can forget to do that, especially if we live in cities. But we must learn how to take the energy that's been pent up inside of us and give it back and let the
Mhm.
divine fill our cups up again.
Right.
I love that you integrate also various schools of thought, such as
Mhm.
Kabbalah, astrology, human design, and it's almost like different religions, or
Mhm.
they're all teaching the same thing. We're all
Right.
teaching the same thing. So how, in your professional experience, what have you found is the common thread between Kabbalah, astrology, human design, and I think was there something else that you have studied
The
that I did,
hexagrams of the I Ching
the
and
I Ching?
developmental psych. Yeah.
What have
So
you pulled from each, or how have you integrated all of these modalities?
the Kabbalistic tree of life is an ancient school of mysticism. It broke down the path our consciousness takes to self-fulfillment and self-awareness. Uh, if you start at the root of the tree of life, there are 32 paths that go up the tree.
Mhm.
Uh, in each center on the path, each essentially chakra or energy wheel that is in our body, there are 4 worlds. So the tree of life was the original model of how consciousness evolved. In fact, Carl Jung talked about the tree of life as charting the process of what he called individuation.
Mhm.
So I was trained as a Jungian analyst, and I studied the tree of life for 15 years. When I had some of my Kundalini experiences and was practicing yoga and learning to meditate, that was more of the Hindu chakra system. So the Hindu chakra system said there were 7 chakras. There are really 12,
Mhm.
but the ones in the body are what they were focusing on.
Mhm.
The astrology is its own system where it's looking at the planets that were going around the Earth at the time you were born. I studied astrology in order to understand the calculations and can do charts actually by hand, which is unheard of today.
Mhm.
But the astrology in its traditional form uses only the birth chart. And then it progresses charts to look at different times in your life. What the human design chart added into the mix, which is astrologers use in progressing charts, is the 3 months before birth.
Mhm.
When I did the research on the human design system to see if it was a valid system, what I found was that the body map itself, which was based at the time in human design on sacred geometry from the Kabbalistic tree, held its structure. The centers held, the structure held, but the meaning of the channels and the gates did not hold.
Mhm.
So I, as a researcher, um, wanted to find an accurate system that could delineate the worlds and the other information that needed to be included. And because I'm a developmental psychologist, I was able to do that. The
Mhm.
astrology is also correlated with hexagrams of the I Ching. There's an interesting correlation. If you multiply 32 paths of intelligence in the tree of life by 12, you get the number 384. 384 are the number of lines in the I Ching.
Mhm.
So we have the systems correlating again. And one of the things I've done in my work is to understand how to use the tree of life and interpret aspects of the body map using that information, as well as the chakras, as well as the astrology as well as the hexagrams. In fact, in the new program that I'm having designed with the energy maps, you will see the astrology along with the hexagram, along with the planet.
Mm.
So the systems will be integrated.
Oh, that's wonderful. I really, really admire how you have put all of these systems together for healing and finding the correlations amongst all of them, because when we have access to this information, it really is so beneficial to us and how we can understand ourselves better and therefore make an impact in the world. And this information can be held. I mean, in Kabbalah, they said that back in the days, they wouldn't allow anyone under the age of 40 learn Kabbalah, right? And they omitted women from learning this knowledge too. And so how amazing that we now have access to all of this. We have
Yes.
freedom to learn.
And the study of the Kabbalah is complex.
Incredibly
complex.
When I was studying the tarot, I remember, and we spoke about this in my energy map reading, that the tarot is on every single path of life. Every major arcana card is on every single pathway.
Right.
And that's fascinating to me.
It is, and it has correlation in the body map.
Yes.
So, in fact, I did write a paper with the major arcana and where it falls in the body map.
Oh, wow. Amazing. I'd love to read that.
Yeah. I'll send you a copy.
Okay. You know, I also am curious about this, and I think some of us who's listening may have heard about this Kundalini awakening. Can you explain to us what is Kundalini and how do you awaken it?
I'm not sure if I can explain how you awaken it fully.
I know
but
that there's so many different kinds of ways that it can happen. But
that's exactly right. So
yeah.
My own experience with it was that I started meditating, as I said, in 1974. And I started hearing the Holy Spirit tell me about knowing with a K, which I didn't understand. And then one day I was sitting and I was very hard on myself. And I was asking the question of what am I afraid? Of what am I afraid? Of what am I afraid? And all of a sudden, a light came through my window. And I was in awe. And I stood up and I was gasping for breath. And it was God.
Mm-hmm.
And it came through me. And I was shown what religion is. I was shown what relationships are. I was shown what I was afraid of, which was dying, because at the moment of death, our consciousness is a clean slate. We have all memory, and then we're wiped clean. Tabula rasa. And at that moment, all knowledge, everything I'd ever learned, came racing through my head. And when it was over, I sat down and wrote an outline for a book on relationships and sent it off to a publisher and got a contract back in the mail. So I knew that it was God's hand giving me something. And shortly thereafter, I remembered another past life in Herculaneum. And when the energy came up my body that time, I was literally paralyzed. And at the end of it, I could see auras around everybody. I knew things nobody had told me, and I didn't know what had happened to me. I felt like my consciousness had changed, and I didn't know anything about Kundalini or energy up the spine. Kundalini is energy that is the caduceus, the DNA molecule, the DNA strand,
the snake
activated up your spine. And when the energy starts to rise up the spine, consciousness begins to awaken. It's Kabbalistic tree of life. Speaks about it. That in Yesod, which is the sacral center in humans, or the gate of life, the lower part of the spine, the energy begins to rise as consciousness expands. And when it goes through your head, you're said to be enlightened.
Mm.
Now, I've had energy go up my spine, and I could say, multiple Kundalini experiences. But I wouldn't call myself an enlightened being. I'm wise, but I think it's presumptuous to think that we know all, or that we're self-realized. There's always more to learn, always more to know.
We're all teachers and students simultaneously.
If the energy rises too quickly, it can create symptoms and pain and trauma. One of the best ways to raise Kundalini energy safely is with the practice of Tai Chi Gong. And that's a ancient Tibetan system where you go through standing exercises and some figure eights and body twists and things that activate the energy but keep you in your body. So many esoteric disciplines want you to go out of your body.
Yeah.
And that is ungrounding. And you cannot live in a spiritual dimension at the expense of the third dimensional reality.
Yes.
You need to bridge and be in both.
Coming back to integrating the four worlds, that's why it's necessary. And I've seen this myself in with my colleagues or my clients, that they want to get so far out, and it can be a form of escapism.
It is.
We need to be here and there. We need to learn the dance of both.
I do teach the dance of both.
Oh, well, what is your free gift that you would like to offer us?
I do a webinar every Thursday at noon. It's nobleenergywellness.com. And if you go on that website and you go into past webinars, there's lots of free materials you could download. I have worksheets for the four worlds. I have gratitude statements for the four worlds, and I add a because statement to it. So that's worth looking at. And I'm going to be teaching about the four worlds the weekend of October 28th and November 4th. And anyone who attends the webinars between now and then will get a 40% discount on the cost of the workshop.
Okay, well, thank you for offering that for us. You guys will find the link to this right below the interview. So Dr. Eleanor, I want to thank you so much for having you share your wisdom and your experiences. I know whoever's listening has absolutely benefited from this. And I can't wait till people take action and actually work with you or listen to your webinars, engage in your webinars, and learn.
Thank you. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Many blessings.
Blessings. Bye for now.